The grocery store was crowded that chilly Thanksgiving afternoon, carts rolling and laughter echoing through the aisles. But near the frozen foods section, a young boy stood quietly beside his mother, staring at the turkeys behind the glass. His mom, Sarah, held a nearly empty wallet in one trembling hand and a small list in the other. Her eyes were tired but gentle, full of the kind of strength that comes from doing everything alone. She worked 2 jobs just to keep the lights on. But this year, even a simple Thanksgiving dinner seemed out of reach, a few feet away. A man in a tailored suit, Mr. Coleman, the CEO of a major food company, watched the scene unfold. He had come in to grab a few items before heading to his family's mansion for the holidays. But something about that little boy's disappointed face stopped him in his tracks. When Sarah whispered, "We'll just get chicken instead." "Sweetie," the boy's small voice broke the silence. "But, Mom, everyone has turkey on Thanksgiving." People nearby pretended not to hear, their carts squeaking away. Yet Mr. Coleman couldn't ignore it. He'd once known what it felt like to have nothing. The memory tugged at something deep inside him. Slowly, he started walking toward them. What happened next left the entire store in stunned silence, and by the time Sarah looked up, tears were streaming down her face. But the reason why, no one saw coming. Sarah blinked in confusion as the man in the expensive suit stopped in front of her cart. His polished shoes, his calm tone, everything about him felt out of place in that crowded grocery aisle. "Excuse me," he said softly, his eyes shifting between her and the little boy clutching her hand. "I couldn't help overhearing. You couldn't find a turkey?" His voice carried no judgment, only curiosity mixed with something she couldn't quite read. She hesitated, embarrassed. "It's fine," she murmured, tucking her wallet back into her worn-out purse. "We'll manage with something smaller. My son doesn't mind." But the boy's disappointed eyes told a different story. Mr. Coleman glanced at the near-empty car, just a loaf of bread, a few cans, and some instant potatoes. He'd seen plenty of people struggle before, but something about this mother and child hit differently. Maybe it was the way she tried to stay proud despite the hardship, or the way the boy smiled just to make her feel better. "Do you live nearby?" he asked suddenly, trying to sound casual. Sarah frowned, unsure how to answer. She didn't know who he was or why he cared. "Yes, just a few blocks down," she said cautiously. He nodded slowly, lost in thought. To him, it was just a small grocery trip, but to them, it was everything. As the cashier called out for the next customer, Mr. Coleman turned back toward the counter with a look that no one could quite understand. Something was about to change. Sarah tried to distract her son, pointing toward a display of cookies near the checkout, but her mind was racing. Why would a stranger care so much? She'd met plenty of people who offered pity but never help. When she turned back, the man was gone. For a moment, she felt relief then confusion as she saw him speaking quietly to the store manager near the service desk. The manager's surprised expression made her uneasy. She didn't want a scene. She didn't want charity. All she wanted was to leave quietly and make the most of what little she had. But as she started unloading her small groceries onto the counter, the cashier scanned them and then paused. "Ma'am," she said softly, "someone's already covered your bill." Sarah froze. Her eyes darted toward the manager, then to the suited man standing near the exit. He gave a small nod, almost like an apology. Before she could say anything, her son tugged her sleeve. "Mom, did he buy our food?" Sarah forced a smile, her heart pounding. Let's just say someone was kind today. But deep down, she felt torn, grateful, yet unsettled. She didn't want to owe anyone anything, especially a stranger. Meanwhile, Mr. Coleman stood outside, watching through the glass doors. He wasn't sure why he did it. Maybe it was guilt, maybe something else. As his phone buzzed with messages from his company about a Thanksgiving charity event, he glanced back at the mother and child leaving the store in for the first time in years. He questioned what real generosity meant. The cold wind brushed against Sarah's face as she stepped out of the store. Clutching the grocery bag close to her chest, the boy skipped beside her, humming a tune. Unaware of the storm of emotions his mother was fighting inside, she turned back once, just in time to see the man walking toward a black car waiting at the curb. Their eyes met for a brief second. He smiled politely, but there was something in his expression, something heavy, like he knew her pain far too well. Later that evening, Sarah set the table in their tiny apartment. The walls were thin, the lights dim, and the turkey-shaped decoration her son had made from paper sat proudly in the center. It wasn't the Thanksgiving she had dreamed of, but she was grateful for the little they had. Still, she couldn't stop thinking about the stranger at the store. Who was he? Why did he look at her that way? Across town, Mr. Coleman sat in his office overlooking the city lights. His assistant handed him a folder, the list of families selected for the company's Thanksgiving donation drive. As he flipped through the papers, his eyes froze. There it was. Sarah Miller, single mother, 2 jobs. Denied assistance last year due to company budget adjustments. His stomach twisted. He remembered now she had written a letter to his company asking for help, a letter he had ignored. He stood up abruptly, heart racing. This wasn't chance. It was something he needed to make right before Thanksgiving morning. Mr. Coleman stared at the file in disbelief. How could he have missed her name? He remembered the letter, now handwritten. desperate yet dignified, asking for a small food donation for her son's Thanksgiving. It had been pushed aside by his former secretary, marked not urgent. Now the guilt hit him like a wave. He couldn't shake the image of the little boy staring at the turkeys through the glass. Determined to fix what he'd ignored, he grabbed his coat and keys, ready to track her down before the night was over. But just as he reached the parking lot, his phone rang. It was his board chairman, reminding him of the company's annual Thanksgiving gala, lavish event meant to celebrate generosity. The irony made his chest tighten. He was supposed to give a speech about compassion while a mother in his own community struggled to buy food. Torn between duty and conscience, he hesitated, watching the rain start to fall against the windshield. Meanwhile, Sarah sat on the couch, her son asleep beside her. She checked her phone and noticed a missed call from an unknown number and an email from Coleman. Food subject line: urgent, donation review. Her heart skipped. Could it be connected to the man from the store? But before she could open it, there was a knock at the door. She froze, staring at the clock. It was almost midnight. Who would come this late? Her hand trembled as she reached for the handle, unaware that the person on the other side was about to change everything. Sarah slowly opened the door, her heart pounding. Standing in the hallway was Mr. Coleman, drenched from the rain, holding a large paper bag and an envelope. For a second, she couldn't speak. He looked completely different without his suit, jacket, just a man, tired and sincere. "I'm sorry for showing up so late," he said quietly, "but I couldn't leave things the way they were." Sarah blinked, confused. "You're the man from the store," she whispered. He nodded and handed her the bag. Inside was a full Thanksgiving dinner, turkey, vegetables, pie, everything her son had wished for. "I found your name in our company records," he continued, his voice trembling slightly. "You wrote to us last year, and we failed you. That was my fault." Tears filled her eyes. She didn't know what to say. "You didn't have to," she began, but he shook his head. "I did." He handed her the envelope next. "This isn't charity," he said softly. "It's a job offer. You have experience in food service, and I want you to manage our new community kitchen project. You shouldn't have to struggle this way." Sarah covered her mouth, overwhelmed. For the first time in years, hope replaced fear. But just as she started to thank him, her son walked in, rubbing his eyes. "Mom, is that Dad?" he asked sleepily. The room fell silent. Mr. Coleman froze, eyes wide. The resemblance was undeniable in that moment. Both adults realized that this meeting wasn't fate. It was unfinished history finding its way back home. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The rain outside softened, and all that filled the small apartment was the quiet hum of the refrigerator and the sound of Sarah's heartbeat pounding in her ears. Mr. Coleman took a slow breath, his voice barely steady. "What did he just say?" he asked gently, eyes fixed on the boy. Sarah's eyes filled with tears, memories she had buried years ago flooding back. "Before you became who you are now," she whispered, "we were together. Things fell apart when your company transferred you overseas, and I found out I was pregnant after you left. I tried to reach you, but I never got through." Mr. Coleman looked stunned, emotion tightening his throat. He knelt down, meeting the boy's curious eyes. "What's your name?" he asked softly. "Ethan," the child said, smiling shyly. It was like looking into a mirror of his younger self. Sarah wiped her tears, half ashamed, half relieved that the truth was finally out. Mr. Coleman stood and looked around the small home, humble but full of love. "You've done more for him than I ever could," he said, "but if you'll let me, I want to be part of his life. Of both your lives." That Thanksgiving morning, they shared their first meal together as a family, not in wealth, but in warmth and forgiveness. Sometimes, life brings people back not by chance, but by purpose. And for Sarah, that purpose had finally come home.